there's been much upset concerning the one-child policy as it comes to the possible end of its implementation. Many government officials and citizens alike have mixed feelings about the policy because some believe that it is inhumane to limit the number of births that a couple can have, while others believe that it will help the world solve its environmental, population density, and economic problems. I have flown to China to capture the effects of the one-child policy in action, and this reporter has learned much more than expected. In fact, I prepared a segment to see how you, the viewer, react to it. As an introduction, China is now in an economic downturn because of the 300 million births that they are preventing. And for each birth prevented, thousands of gross domestic product is lost. Another problem that China is facing is its annual birth rate, which is still at 10 to 14 million. An astounding amount, considering that the U.S.'s annual birth rate is only 3.3 million. Yet another problem that China is facing is the number of senior citizens that accounts for its population. And even though that number is only 1/8, that number will start to increase in the next few years, causing labor shortages because there will be too many elderly coming into the age of retiring and too few young people coming into the age of working to fill an effective workforce. However, there is a bright side to the one-child policy, as China has been able to divert 1.3 billion tons of carbon monoxide in just 2009 alone. So, even though China is now in an economic downturn of 300 million births that they've prevented, the diverting of 1.3 billion tons of carbon monoxide from escaping into the Earth's atmosphere proves that the one-child policy is necessary. The policy was established in 1979 by dictator Deng Xiaoping, responding to the fact that China's population, which was at that time 1.2 billion, had become too large. The baby booms of the 1950s and 1960s accounted for over 100 million births, making it a very problematic deal for the Chinese. Fast forwarding to 2009, you see that China has been able to prevent 300 million births in just 30 years. A staggering amount. But could the policy have prevented more? And even though the policy has had untold success, resulting in the mid-2030s population drop, it doesn't quite stack up to the thousands of cases of infanticide indirectly caused by the one-child policy, does it? Even worse, would it still matter if it happened to people who had 2 children and were sneaking them, had 2 children and paid the fines, or had acceptance having a second child? I've actually talked to authority Ming Yao about sneaking a second child, and he said that there have actually been thousands of cases of twins. Clever ruse to get around the one-child policy, if you ask this reporter, because if you have twins, you are not subject to the typical fines incurred by the one-child policy. However, the family could be fined, jailed, etc. if the family is caught. Monetary fines now range from $4,000 to a staggering $25,000 if the family is caught. The Jing family was directly affected by this as when I walked around downtown Beijing, I found them living on a street corner, and they had kindly told me that they were evicted from their home after paying a fine in excess of $10,000. Their boys, Qi and Jin, were directly affected by this because they're only kids, and it shows how monetary fines can be extremely unfair. However, there is an interesting side to the one-child policy, as there are incentives. Surprising actually because it is a law, and as a citizen, you are required to follow it. Incentives include money, better healthcare, better housing, better job possibilities, and even government job possibilities. The policy has a huge future, resulting in the estimated mid-2030s population drop, near future nationwide labor shortages, and an upcoming worldwide economic crisis. The policy is extremely significant because in the year 2050, the population of the entire planet is supposed to be 9 billion if the policy is repealed. However, if the policy is not repealed and it is strictly a one-child policy, then the population of the entire Earth is going to be an estimated 5.5 billion, a much more manageable amount. However, in the next few years, actually, there will be nationwide labor shortages. As I've said this before, there will be too many elderly coming into the age of retiring and who are already retired, and too few kids coming into the age of working to fill an effective workforce. China has also been able to divert 1.3 billion tons of carbon monoxide from escaping into the Earth's atmosphere in just 1 year. And this number is actually expected to increase in the next couple of years. And for this reason, as recommended by Alistair Doyle, a one-child policy expert, that this policy be implemented in every country with 250 million citizens or more. China's one-child policy was aimed mainly as a long-term goal made the last 30 years or 3 marking periods. However, quite a few short-term effects were present. An effect that was present was the cutting down on average births per woman before the policy was implemented, which was about 7 to about 3, just 10 years after the policy was implemented. Also, China's annual birth rate as a whole dropped from around 30 million to today's still large amount, but not as problematic 12 million. However, there were also scares, which prompted the citizens to obey the government like a trained dog. Song is an example of this, as when she got pregnant with her second son, she feared for her life every day as overzealous officials would come by her house, kick down doors to other neighbors' houses, force sterilizations, take babies, and even beat the families. However, she's on a better track with the law after paying her fine of $5,250. As aforementioned, the policy was aimed mainly as a long-term goal, made the last 30 years, and there is no better example of this than the around 300 million births prevented in just 30 years. And as said by Ding Zhang, another one-child policy expert, that we did in 30 years what takes other countries 100 years to do. Reach goals even the US couldn't. Mr. Zhang will be voting on the future of the policy this fall. However, a long-term problem that was unforeseen was the loss of wealth in China's economy. China was aiming to increase their wealth by getting nations to support, adopt, and keep asking for help with the one-child policy. However, that failed, and by preventing 300 million births, they have lost billions. The one-child policy debate is not over, and it's more likely than not that we will see more coming up with the 2011 vote. 300 million births prevented may be enough for some people, but knowing who we are, we would like more. So, reporting on the one-child policy, this has been Kai Taylor. See you next week.